Hi everybody. Today we are talking about hidden gaps or things that caregivers don't know about working with adult protective services. I talk to family caregivers all the time in my one-on-one meetings who have either made reports to adult protective services on behalf of an elderly parent or an elderly family member who might be refusing care or self-neglecting their care, or adult children who were contacted by adult protective services because somebody else made a report. I will say in almost all of these situations, family caregivers are really hesitant to work with adult protective services. This happens because of a lack of trust, of suspicions about the intentions of the APS workers. What do they want? Why are they investigating? Well, sometimes they can't tell you that. And so because APS always doesn't share information, or they're not forthcoming about how they can help or what they're going to do, family members just don't want to work with them. Now, I can tell you that my experience in working with adult protective services in the 25 years that I've been doing this has been mostly positive. But to be transparent, there have been instances when guardianship petitions were already initiated and adult protective services had pretty much already made up their minds, or they were so deeply entrenched in politics and attorney relationships in the county where they were working that there was just no flexibility. So to be balanced, in this video, I'm going to share how you can understand what APS does in your county, where your loved one lives, and why it's important to know how you can or cannot work with them. I'll also talk about 4 gaps or things that people don't know about when working with adult protective services. These are things that you want to consider, so that you want to know that, yes, I am going to return their call, or I'm going to return their call, but I'm only going to provide so much information, or I'll return their call and I fully want to work with them and I want their cooperation in working with me. I also will share 2 real examples of an APS investigation and an APS report, a performance audit, so that you know that there is information readily available out there about APS if you know how to look for it, and I'll explain how you can do that. So you might be wondering, well, what is my experience to even have this conversation? If this is your first time here, I'm Pamela D. Wilson. I'm a professional caregiving expert, and I am an expert witness in litigation and court cases, and an advocate with 25 years of experience helping older adults and their caregivers work through the health, financial, and legal aspects of caregiving, including family dynamics, working with adult protective services, and county probate courts. You can learn more about me by going directly to my website, PamelaDWilson.com. There are also links down below this video where you can learn more about me and schedule a one-on-one consultation. Please do click the box, like this video, follow my channel, share these and other videos, and comment, even if it's only to say thank you. One little thank you goes a long way in helping other people find their way here. So let's now talk about working with APS. Should you or shouldn't you? To be perfectly transparent, working with APS depends on the state and the county where your parent lives, because more than likely that will be where the report will be filed. So let's first just start to talk about where you can find information about APS. The obvious is to Google Adult Protective Services and then the county name of where your parent lives. And a state site should come up with phone numbers and information about APS. Now, if you're looking for information about audit reports or investigations or other things, then, sorry, my voice is a little bit off today, then what you want to do is you want to contact a state agency, like the Office of the State Auditor, or maybe the grand jury in the county where your elderly parent lives, the district attorney's office, or Health and Human Services. And you can ask if they have any type of performance reports or audit reports on how APS operates in the county. You can also search online to see if you can find anything else. So let me share an example of a publicly available report and information. And this is from June 4th of 2025. It was an investigation in Sacramento County, California. And there was a press release put out. And basically what it stated was there was an investigation into APS in Sacramento County from 2019 to 2024. And what they found was that there were nearly 4,000 cases of elder financial abuse reported to Adult Protective Services. Yet, when law enforcement in Sacramento County got involved, only 123 of these 4,000 cases were referred to the district attorney's office. And of the 123, only 89 cases were prosecuted. So if you do the math, 89 out of 4,000, that is a prosecution rate of less than 2%. It's no wonder that family members and others are exploiting the elderly. They know that they're going to get away with it. If you want to read more about this particular press release, I will place a link in the comment section below this video. You can read it yourself. So, part of the problem with APS investigating elder abuse and neglect many times is that, similar to this Sacramento County report, it's limited only to financial exploitation. That is only one part of the story. Most of the cases referred to APS and investigated by APS are self-neglect. So we have to look at the big picture here, and we have to look at both sides. So you might ask, well, if Sacramento County investigated financial abuse, why didn't they investigate the other half? We don't know. We don't know what's going on there. And so what we do know is that it is hard to find information sometimes. So let me share example number 2. And this is both one has both good and bad, right? So what I did was I thought, let me Google APS results, APS investigation, Jefferson County, Colorado. Well, I did this, and I actually found a 122-page report from May of 2020. Now, admittedly, this is 5 years ago, but it's a performance audit that was done by the Colorado Office of State Auditor. And honestly, I think every county should be mandated to do these types of reports to show the taxpayers where their money is going and to show what is being done to support the elderly. So this 122-page report has recommendations and suggestions for APS to do a better job. Now, the big thing is, if you're going to work with APS, it's important to know what they do in your state and in your county, because California could be very different from Texas and from New York and South Carolina and North Carolina and Nebraska and all the states in between. So let me read you a description of what APS does in Colorado. May be very different in your state. So it says, Colorado's, and I'm reading this from a piece of paper here, Colorado's Adult Protective Services Program was established in 1983 to provide for the safety and protection of at-risk adults who are or are suspected to be victims of mistreatment and or self-neglect, and are unable to address these circumstances without assistance. Now, Colorado defines an at-risk adult as a person 18 and older who is susceptible to mistreatment or self-neglect because they are unable to perform or obtain services necessary for their health, safety, or welfare, or lack sufficient understanding or capacity to make or communicate responsible decisions concerning their person or affairs. So this wording in this report very closely mirrors what an incapacitated person would be in the statutes from the state of Colorado. It may be very different in your state. So many of the fears in working with adult protective services is that they're going to take over. Now, I will say that they absolutely will take over. If there is concern about an older person being financially exploited, or if an elderly family member has Alzheimer's or dementia or some other condition that means that they can't even realize that they're not taking care of themselves. They're saying things like, well, I don't have memory loss. I'm okay. I can take care of myself. But when someone shows up at their home and looks at their home and looks at them and the fact that they have been wearing the same clothes for 5 days or 10 days, and there are dirty dishes in the sink and pots and pans on the stove, and the house is a mess, and the dogs and the cats haven't been let out in God knows how long, there truly is a question about whether they can take care of themselves. And in those cases, APS has a duty to protect these people regardless of whether family members want to be involved at all. So that is something that you should highly consider if they contact you and you don't return their phone calls. So let's look at the 4 other gaps that are very common that you should be aware of that could be happening in your state or your county. Services are very inconsistent across states and counties because APS is a state and a county run program. Even counties within a state. So I live in the Denver metro area, but I help families all over the United States. In the Denver metro area, there are some major counties: Jefferson, Adams, Denver, Arapahoe, Douglas. The difference in APS workers and what they do and their willingness to help, even in these counties, is like night and day. So that's important for you to consider. Number 2 is states and counties have limited funding and staff. Now, we all know money is always an issue for public programs, but that does not mean that you cannot ask for their support, for them to help you. Because if you don't, that may cause more problems and more issues in your family, in your caregiving situation. Your elderly parent may continue to be financially exploited or abused by another family member or neglected by another family member, or your elderly parent may be self-neglecting their care. Number 3, there is a lack of standardization in programs. And so by that, what I mean is one county may have a particular system for investigating a case and for proceeding with a case. Another county may have a totally different system. Now, while the state watches over this, the state obviously gives the counties leeway to come up with their own standards and processes. Additionally, the staff who are hired may have vastly different skills about how to work with families and how to work with older adults and how to actually work with and collaborate with somebody instead of work against and make it more difficult for families to work with them. All of that comes from the top. It comes from the person that leads the APS department. Number 4, and this is the most difficult one, this is the reason for this video, there is a very heavy reliance on Adult Protective Services to rely on participation from the client, which would be the older adult or the at-risk adult, and their family. Now the downside is any person can say, hey, APS, I don't want to work with you. I don't want to have anything to do with you. Don't call me. Don't come see me. If APS has information about family members, the family members can do the same thing. So what this results in is usually then APS can't do their job. They have to close the case even though they may have suspicions that things are not going well. There's nothing they can do if no one will participate with them and give them information. And this is really the catch-22 because APS doesn't necessarily trust everybody. People don't necessarily trust APS. So the main question here is, how do you establish a relationship with APS that is trusting in both directions? Because this truly cannot be a one-way relationship. And many times it feels like that because APS won't give out information or they hold information back. And so that just makes family members not want to work with them. So there is a lot more information about working with APS on the videos here on my YouTube channel. There are articles on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, and in particular, y'all may know that I do a podcast. It is called The Caring Generation. Episode number 204, which I will place a link below this video, talks about how family members actually become suspected by Adult Protective Services of elder abuse and neglect. So if you listen to that podcast or you go to the podcast page and read the transcript, you can learn things that you want to make sure that you are not doing, especially if you are working with APS or an APS report has been made with concerns about your elderly parent. I thank you all so much for being here. I'm Pamela D. Wilson. I'm a caregiving expert and an expert witness who helps families through all of these issues, working with APS and the probate court, health, legal, financial issues, family dynamics. You can go to my website, PamelaDWilson.com, to find more information. I look forward to seeing you all again soon in another video.